behalf of thebasshang.com and Jim's Music, I'd like to present Stewart McKinsey. Give him a round of applause, please, guys.
Sure.
And a wicked cool instrument.
I figured since there's really only about a half hour or so, I'll keep this fairly low-key, kind of interactive. So if anyone's got any questions at any point, either wave your hands or throw something at me or what have you. Extended range bass is kind of a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There are guys that get it just to do like really spectacular stuff. There are people who get them because they look cool and have no idea how to use them and don't take the time to figure them out. And there are, you know, like 1.5 million really bad jokes about these things. Harp, surfboard, aircraft carrier. The list is very, very long. You know, there's always that question, so why don't you just play piano? And then the answer is because I'm a bass player. So I mean, it's all about making music, right? So in my case, I wanted an instrument that was going to kind of keep me from getting lazy. When I play a 4-string or a 5-string or a 6-string or even an 8-string bass, I have a habit of falling into patterns and just sort of doing what's easy. There's a range that you can just kind of coast on. You know, once you know how to play a certain anything, you know, you can sort of start to sleep your way through it the more you do it. With this, I don't have that option. Like there's just too much. You know, if I'm not really careful and I hit one note, there are more notes. So while I use the Groove Gear fret wrap, which is an amazing invention, by the way. If you do any kind of aggressive playing, two-handed playing, you know, the tapping stuff, it's brilliant. It absolutely is brilliant. As is this strap. The Duo strap is awesome for something like this that doesn't balance necessarily well by itself. Very cool.
How much does that bass weigh?
About 14 pounds. The adjustment is actually, as is the case when you add strings, it's trying to keep the thing quiet. It wants to make noise. A bass this size, with this many strings, when it's designed well and it's very resonant, wants to make noise. So if I'm going to take it out on stage and I'm going to play music, I want to make specific noise, not random noise. And that's all part of the challenge with this thing. But with an extended range bass, it's a bass. I could still gig with this thing. Granted, there are not a lot of people that would call me and say, hey, we're doing a blues jam, bring out your 10-string. Not so much of that. But, I mean, I could, you know, it's... I got this thing because I really, more than anything, just wanted something that I could use to explore writing music. I don't do a lot of really incredibly fast, flashy, cool stuff. I write chords and melodies, and this thing gives me the chance to explore all kinds of textures. To mute something like this, use whatever you can. I've actually seen guys that play 9-string bass that'll wear a shirt with really loose sleeves at the end, like a little overlong at the end, so they can just set it across the bottom string so that it doesn't give you that huge church pipe organ sort of rumble under everything. Because if you're playing one of these things, you're doing anything even remotely aggressive. Eventually, that sort of occurs underneath it, and it's not that loud usually, but the thing is, if I'm playing in G, and the low C sharp is going, I'm getting, you know, a built-in tritone, which if I was doing, you know, nu metal would be very cool. But as I generally not, it's not perfect. But it's whatever works. The question was about the controls and how this bass has none. I wanted as little as possible to color the sound, and I wanted as little as possible that could go wrong. You know, I've had preamps go out on gigs, and if you've got a bass that's not set up active passive the right way, you're just boned. And so I wanted to keep it simple. Plus, you know, I come from an old school, so it's sort of like the more wood you've got in the instrument, the more tone, you know, the more mass the thing has. Granted, this has a lot of mass. It's got a lot of lumber. Like I said, everyone who plays these plays them for different reasons. A lot of guys are really pyrotechnic and do very, very acrobatic kind of athletic playing. I don't. My stuff is all very, very simple, and the older I get, the simpler my stuff gets. My music gets simpler. The melodies, the chords, all of it. So even when I'm practicing, when I set up my practice time, it tends to be, you know, there's finger exercises, there's warm-ups, there's a little bit of scale work, there's a little bit of melody work, and then I leave myself a little bit of time at the end for sort of like free association, which is kind of on-the-spot songwriting. And I use a lot of the ideas that Bamba was talking about, where I'll use just 2 chords, or a couple notes, or like a single melodic phrase, and see where I can take it, see what it'll do. So let me do some of that, if that's cool. I mean, cool. Or something like that. No, not at all. It's tough to keep it quiet when you slap. So I mean, you know, I love that. So it can be done. The tuning? It's the same as a regular bass, and the middle 4 strings are E, A, D, G. Then you've got 3 lower and 3 higher. And it stays in 4th, so C sharp, F sharp, B, E, A, D, G, C, F, and a B flat on top. Yes?
Do you still gig on 4 or 5 strings?
Oh yeah, I've actually, I didn't bring any stands, so I didn't pull them out. I've got a couple of my working basses over there. If I'm teaching, I teach on 4 or 5 strings, unless someone wants something else. For most of my gigs, I've got a couple of Nordstrand 5-string basses that are about as good as it gets. You know, 1 fretted, 1 fretless. I find the more I get into music, the less I listen to bass players. Bass players have a real habit, especially the guys that are doing solo stuff, of writing for the instrument to showcase what they can do, certainly. But I mean, the bass is a very specific kind of character. You know, there's a real sort of emotional quality you can get out of a bass that's very hard to get out of anything else with strings that you wear in this kind of fashion. I get into unusual music and unusual instruments because that's where I find inspiration. Anyone that's doing something that resonates emotionally, especially if it's not my instrument, that's what I want to get into because I want to find out what they're doing, how they do it. Not because I want to, you know, get up and play this thing like an oud, or, you know, a serpent or something really obscure, but because that fascinates me. I've always been about practicality, so when I practice, I try to make it as much like a gig situation as possible, so I practice standing. If I have to sit, my seated height for the instrument is about the same as where it is when I'm when I'm playing on the Strat. Obviously with the 10 string it's a little bit different because I sit down and it looks like this. This really pretty much comes out for events like this, clinics, NAMM, and solo shows. Because on the solo show I can get away with all the stuff that I can't do on a regular gig.
What's your amp situation usually, and how do you get it so it can accommodate those low strings?
The low stuff? I use, as far as an amp goes, I get whatever I can get that's got power. I prefer something that's clean. Lately I've been using the Gansband stuff, and I'm very happy with it for what I do. It's great. The speakers are the big issue. And when I first moved away from 6-string to 8-string, I was one of those guys, man. I was hitting all the online forums. I was talking to every bass player I knew that did something that was unusual. Guys like Melvin Lee Davis, Bill Dickens, talking to those guys about their gear, and talking to guys that designed speakers. And eventually I hooked up with the guys at Donkey Groove.
Do me a favor and walk down from like your E or wherever. Just I want to hear how much lower it goes.
From a standard E?
Yeah.
That guy? Thank you to Barbara for having me on stage. Thank you for Jim's for hosting this event in the first place. It's very cool to see Ron Staunton, to see some fantastic builders putting stuff out. Thanks very much.